You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Good evening. My name is Peter Basserman, Chairman of the Inland Wetlands Commission in Branford. I'd like to call the meeting to order of July 9th, 2020. It is now 7 p.m. This meeting is a remote meeting conducted via Zoom. And let's see, we have all commissioners present are seated and can participate this evening. We'll do a roll call. Let's see, Steve Sullivan.
Present.
Suzanne Boda.
Here.
Richard Goodalsh.
Looks like Richard might be rejoining.
Okay. Richard, you're present here? While we're waiting for Richard, Clarice.
Present.
Richard, can you hear us? You're muted, I think. Richard. Are you there, babe? Okay, at some point, we'll get Richard on board. This meeting is being conducted in accordance with Executive Order 7B, Part 1. I asked Jamie Frederick to just lay out the rules of the road for this evening's discussion. Jamie?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. Per executive order that allows the commission to have remote meetings, everyone must state their name and title each time they speak. If you are looking to unmute yourself, there should be a button in the lower left corner, and immediately adjacent to that, a button for your video. If you are calling in, you can unmute your line by pressing *6. And you can toggle between different screen views in the upper right-hand corner between speaker view and gallery view. If you have any questions, please let us know.
Peter Basserman. Thank you, Jamie. First of all, I want to thank Branford Community TV for again participating in this evening's meeting and getting it out on the community TV. It certainly helps in the overall community education to have this available for the public to review. Try one more time. Richard, are you participating this evening?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you much. First up, we have a training session that I had talked about at previous meetings. We're going to try to target this for about an hour. There were some questions that were raised, but please don't feel restricted by those particular questions. With us tonight is Darcy Winter from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. She's been at DEEP, how many years, Darcy?
Well, late 1989.
So she's gone through a few name changes with DEEP. It's my intent that this not be a one-time only affair. but given the makeup of the commission at this point, and the fact that we have some varying degrees of expertise, some areas that certainly enhance the ability of the commission to act prudently. But in terms of wetland science and some of the process questions that have come up, it's an opportunity for Darcy to give us some of the straight skinny on the do's and don'ts regarding process, and maybe educate us a little bit in some of the questions on particulars. I think there was one on soils and things like that we can get into. So I'm going to turn this over to Darcy. It's an informal discussion tonight, and we'll see how that goes. And maybe the next time we get together, it could be in person. But as I say, we try to keep this to an hour, both presentation and questions. Darcy?
Thank you, Peter. Again, I'm Darcy Wenther with DEEP's Land and Water Resources Division. So some of you know me, and those of you who don't, Peter already asked how long I've been with the department. I started my career late 1989 as a seasonal with the Wildlife Division, did several years with that, worked my way around the department, did some legislative work, worked on a rivers management program, which then morphed into the watershed management program, and eventually found my way here. And I've been with the Inland Wetlands Management Program since 1996. I have to give my disclaimers that I'm not an attorney. So if anybody has really in-depth legal questions, it might be best suited for your town attorney. And I can't really speak to the merits of an application currently before you. If you have some general concepts or concerns or process, like Peter said, then by all means, that's perfect for this type of session. Peter and Jamie did some questions that I think people had posed. And my apologies, I actually developed a bit of a presentation and then everything went kaput yesterday. Welcome to the virtual world. So I want to keep this a little bit informal anyway. I think it's perfect for this type of environment. I do have some websites I can show you, and hopefully the screen sharing will work and I can direct you to some interesting resources of information. So with that said, let me just jump right into the questions. One of the questions that was forwarded to me was regarding soil scientists and the information that they provide. I'm not sure if I quite understood the gist of it, but it was basically, when is it more useful to look at, I guess, the broad categories or the words of the law, the statute, versus the detailed report that a soil scientist may provide? Did I get that question right? If someone might want to offer a little bit more insight.
I think I wrote that question. So the state has the categories of permeability, basically, right? And then there are all of these, the myriad of soil. Well, this loam, that loam, the da-da-da-da-da. And then you'll see them in a map of Connecticut. You can see generally what the soils are. But then if a soil scientist goes out, there may be variations within that. And I'm new to the commission, so I just guidance in how the soil scientist with all those different types of soil, how do you interpret that? I mean, how important is that? How do you interpret that?
All right. That's kind of where I thought you were going with this. So, all right. So I could spend all day talking about soils. I failed to mention this before. I do have my soil science certificate. Like a foreign language, if you don't use it, you can lose it, meaning soils is a language. It's reading the landscape. It's understanding the properties of the soil. And so tricky areas, if you wanted me to go delineate a tricky area or landscape and delineate the wetland, I would probably be, no, you better get somebody else until I get up to speed again in practice. But I do want to let you know that I do have my soil science certificate. So to get to your question, the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Act has a definition of wetland, and it uses the terms poorly drained, very poorly drained, alluvial, and floodplain. Alluvial and floodplain are generic descriptions kind of related to how the soil formed. Let me put those aside for now. Poorly drained and very poorly drained refer to soil drainage class, which you alluded to just now in your question. A soil drainage class is not a taxonomic term. It's not something that's used to classify soils nationwide. It is a locally assigned grouping based on conditions and application of that information. So it helps someone understand what the soil can be used for, the limitations and the potentials of the soil for crops, for building, recreation, even wildlife, habitat maintenance, that kind of thing. So we use drainage class terms in our definition of wetland. There are seven, I got to remember. Yes, I think there's 7 drainage classes: excessively drained, somewhat excessively drained, well drained, moderately well drained, somewhat poorly drained, and very poorly drained. And of course, the last 2 are what are referenced in our definition. It does have to do with water. Drainage class is basically how often, for how long, to what degree is the soil wet. And a soil scientist can go out in the field and look at a soil profile, dig a little hole, auger it, and based on the characteristics of that soil, the color, where the water table is, can determine whether the soil is poorly drained or very poorly drained. But there's more that goes into it. So you probably get soil scientist reports that, as you mentioned, delve into terms and classifications and the soil series names. So how does that relate to soil drainage class? And I'm not quite sure if I'll bridge it all that well, but let me give it a try. So again, soil drainage class is a local kind of grouping used to help you understand the soil. Again, its limitations and its potentials. Soil taxonomy is the official system that is used throughout the country for classifying and IDing soils. So if I'm in California, or someone's in California talking to me here in Connecticut and uses those terms that are found in the soil taxonomic system, I can understand exactly what they're talking about. But if I started to throw around the soil drainage class terms, they may not understand what I'm talking about. Do you all follow me on that? Okay, a couple head nods will do. So soil taxonomy is kind of, let me back up a little bit. Soil taxonomy is like botanists going out in the field with a field guide and drilling down kingdom, phylum, so forth, until they get to the plant that they're trying to identify. The same thing with soil taxonomy. There is a formal classification system. A soil scientist will go out in the field and basically ID that soil. A lot of this work has been done kind of up front. The Natural Resources Conservation Service, part of the federal USDA, has mapped all the soils in Connecticut and has produced these general planning maps. You may have seen the Web Soil Survey, and you can get the information on the Web Soil Survey. The problem with mapping is there's limitations. You can only go down to a certain acreage. You're not going to have or find inclusions or other resources like vernal pools or intermittent streams that you have the ability to look at. So anyway, getting back to soil scientists. So soil scientists will use these tools, the Web Soil Survey, will look at the landscape, will look at all sorts of things, and then look at their soil. And they'll classify it using the taxonomic system. In taxonomy, if you classify a soil as aquic or paraquic, you're going to, that more or less relates to very poorly drained and poorly drained. But again, the soil drainage classes are not part of the taxonomic system. So again, if I use poorly drained and very poorly drained in California, they may not know what I'm talking about. So instead, I would say aquic. So as you drill down through taxonomy, you'll eventually get to the series name. There are 112 major soil series or types of soils in Connecticut. And they tend to be named for the location where they were found. Classic one is a Windsor soil, ID'd and found in Windsor, Connecticut. Those series names are what you often see on maps, especially in the Web Soil Survey. And in addition to the series name, there may be additional descriptive criteria added called a phase. Phasing is not part of the taxonomic system, but it would be things like mucky, Ridgeberry mucky loam or Ridgeberry fine sandy loam or something like that. It's a descriptor. So in soil scientists, I'm not sure if I'm kind of making links here or not, so definitely ask questions afterwards. The soil scientist, using a variety of tools, web soil survey, all sorts of things, going to site, looking at the soil, using the classification system will ID that soil. Through that classification system can easily cull out those that are in Connecticut poorly drained or very poorly drained. In certain situations, if a site is not very difficult to look at, or you're talking about a small residential project in the north, west part of the property, and in the southeast part is a tiny little wetland, it may not be necessary to go through a detailed classification of that soil. A soil scientist can still observe the properties of the soil, look for certain texture, color, what we call redoxymorphic features, and basically group that soil as either a poorly drained, very poorly drained, well-drained, excessively well-drained soil. So how detailed of a survey or how detailed of a report you get may depend on how difficult the site is. How much usable land is there? Somebody might want to try to make every dry piece, available to build on. So how detailed that report gets may depend on the soil scientist doing the work as well. But the bottom line is, as an inland wetland commission, you regulate poorly drained, very poorly drained alluvial or floodplain soils. And if you receive information or report that does not provide that information, ask for it. If you see a report that says this is an aquent, raise your hand, say, how does that relate to poorly drained or very poorly drained? I can tell you right now, aquent is the taxonomic classification. I know that AQU stands for wet, water. I happen to know that that is a poorly drained soil. But ask the questions. It never hurts to have too much information. A lot of times, the details that are provided in a soil scientist report or on the web soil survey can actually be really beneficial to an inland wetland commission, especially if you have a really, like I said, complicated site. You're not just looking at where is that wetland line, but you're also looking at what are the soils just upland of that wetland line in your upland review area. Are those soils highly erosive? What is the permeability or the ability to have those soils infiltrate water if there's a detention basin or some sort of stormwater management system designed? Those are things you might want to consider that are found often in a soil scientist report. And if they're not, you can ask. Maybe the report just simply says, oh, you don't have to worry about these soils because they're upland soils, they're well-drained, they're excessively well-drained. It might be, depending, again, case by case, depending on the nature of the activity that's being proposed. It might be prudent for the commission to say, well, what kind of soils are those upland soils? Are they erosive? Have you planned the proper soil and erosion control measures and things like that? Sorry, I can ramble all day on the subject matter, but I'm not sure if I made the connections. Did I? Yeah, okay. Are there any other questions regarding that, or anybody who might have just as much experience in soils that might want to chime in? No? All right. Another question that I received. Oh, before we do that, let me pull up, and Jamie, this is where I might need your help because I'm now having problems. I just lost my thing. Jamie, will you be able to pull up a link for me by any chance? All right, there is a PDF I sent to you. Well, first there's a Connecticut Inland Wetland Soils link. Is there any chance you can pull that up on the screen for people to see? Yeah, that's it. There we go. Thank you. Through the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and there's a button to start the web soil survey where you get that general mapping. They have a list on their website of all the map unit names. This kind of relates to the soil series. When you drill down through that taxonomic classification system, you eventually get to the soil series name. They have a list of soil series names that relate to poorly drained or very poorly drained soils. So this might be helpful to have as a little reference. All right, the other thing, and these map unit numbers on this page refer to, may not match a soils map that a soil scientist provides or a consulting, engineer or what have you. These map unit numbers distinctly relate to the web soil survey provided by the Natural Resources Conservation Service. The other item, Jamie, if you could pull up, is I think just below that there was a link to a or you know what, better yet, can you go to the top of this page by any chance? And click on soils, that's in blue, just below the blue bar. Up just one over to the right a little bit. Up. Oh yeah, I guess, yep, right there, that's fine. And then the page that opens up, if you can scroll down to the middle of the page and click on interpretations. Sorry, folks, I'm having computer problems, so, yep. And then when it opens up, scroll down in the middle of the page again, and you should see Katina right in the middle there, right above your map. Soil Katinas of Connecticut. This is a really handy chart that NRCS has put together. Scroll down to the second page. On the landscape, if you look at a hill, as you move down that hill, typically from the top to the bottom, you're going to go from dry to wetter because you might end up in a river valley or where a wetland is located. There are perched wetlands, there are seeps on the sides of hills, but I don't want to get into that right yet. What NRCS has done is put together this Katina, this chart, and what it does is it lists all those soil series names, again, taxonomic as you drill down through that classification system. You get the soil series names, but it also lists what the drainage class is. If you can see at the top of the chart, you have excessively well-drained, poorly, very poorly drained soils. So the far two right columns, poorly, very poorly drained, all the soils in those two columns are Connecticut inland wetland soils. All right. In addition, remember, and this was something I was going to get back to, all your floodplain and alluvial soils are also Connecticut inland wetlands. That happens to be the row that starts off with alluvial. I don't know, Jamie, if you can use your mouse and kind of point to that, or, yep, right there. So going across that entire row, all those soils are also Connecticut inland wetlands. You might notice something. I think it's, I can't quite see it, but is it, I'm sorry, Jamie, can you blow that up a little bit? There we go, the Suncook, yep. There's a soil named Suncook under the alluvial soils, but look what column it's in, excessively well drained. Remember, all floodplain soils, regardless of drainage class, are inland wetland soils. So this is a handy little chart to have. In addition, if you open it up online like we have now, you can click on one of these names. And why don't you click on, let's see, try Ridgeberry. It's all the way to the top right under poorly drained. If you click on the Ridgeberry link, that should open up a new page. Here's your taxonomic, here's your detailed information for classifying the soil and figuring out it's a Ridgeberry series. You don't have to know all this, but you often will see soil scientists' reports with similar information. But there are things in here that might help you depending on the project, depending on the site. It's case by case. For example, the description of the soil. If you see at the very top, it says very deep, somewhat poorly to poorly drained. There you go. You know it's a wetland. But it also talks about coming in contact with a hard layer, often referred to as a hard pan. A lot of our soils, especially on drumlins, because of the glaciers, have a very dense layer, sometimes as little as a few inches, 15 inches under the surface of the soil. This could be important because water can't necessarily infiltrate that soil very well. So what kind of stormwater management systems have they designed if these soils are present? If it's literally abutting a wetland, how's that going to impact the wetland if the water can't infiltrate? A lot of times, for example, on drumlins, they happen to be overlain by a silty mantle, a silt type soil. Silt really runs off very quickly. So there's some information in these things that you can glean that might help you. Again, as a wetland commissioner, you don't really need to know all these details, and it will be site specific, and depending on the nature or the difficulty of the project, you may want some of this additional information, you may not. Some of the other things you can find in here is they talk about slope. They'll tell you where the soil is found and the type of slope it's found on. That might come in handy. So I just wanted to point out those pages, especially the Katina. That chart is very, very useful. And if you can go back, Jamie, to the chart and to the second page, please. One last thing I wanted to point out on this chart. All organic soils in Connecticut are wetland soils, inland wetland soils. And at the very bottom, on the lower left, are your organic soils with the series names. Something that is new to this chart in just the past couple of years is NRCS nationwide actually has been doing this, but a lot in New England. They're looking at submerged soils. And if you look at the definition of wetland in the Inland Wetland and Watercourses Act, it says wetlands means land, including submerged land. Submerged soil will be your poorly drained, obviously very poorly drained soils. Where this comes into play, and this is not within your purview, is really in tidal areas along the coast. And so they've recently added some information regarding that to this chart. I'm just letting you know about that. You don't have purview, though, over tidal wetlands. Any questions on this? No? All right. So I recommend that you maybe sometimes, if you have a really complicated project with a really complicated landscape and microtopography, and you have competing soil scientists that are maybe arguing about something, it might be handy to have this because you might be able to open up these descriptions. These are based on the National Cooperative Soil Survey, which is a national system. Again, you don't have to know all the details, but it could be helpful. Did that answer your question? Long-winded? Yeah? All right. Thank you, Jamie. You can close that one up. Don't need that. All right. So another question we had, or I was provided, was, and I'm not sure I understand this one either. It had to do with pools, and I'm not surprised to hear about pools. It seems like I've heard from a lot of towns that with people staying home and not traveling and doing staycations, there's a lot of people wanting to put pools in their backyards. But this was, I think, how much information you can request regarding a pool. Can you request information about the type of filters or things like that? And I'm not sure if I got that question right either. Did I? If someone wants to, it's
That was me again. I just, being new, in terms of the detail that we get into, I'm learning more. I'm learning about why certain filters, I don't know, something with the backwash and where that water has to go, I think is the question. Like,
all right. Before you go on, let me maybe I can help you out there. As an Inland Wetland Commission, you need to, I hate to say this, in some ways, sometimes put blinders on. You are not a mini environmental protection board. You are looking at activities, specifically activities that are going to likely impact wetlands or watercourses. So when a pool goes in, hopefully it's not directly in a wetland, although maybe someone might propose one on an excessively dry floodplain soil, who knows? Most likely it's probably going to be in your upland review area, so you review it the same way. I guess I would want to know, what is the activity that may impact, that could likely impact the nearby wetland or watercourse? If it's an in-ground pool, they're probably going to be digging and removing material. Where are they going to put that excavated dirt? Where are they going to stockpile it? How long will it be stockpiled? Will they have proper E&S control measures around it? When the pool goes in, like you said, the backwash, how are they going to drain? Where's that water going to go? Do they plan to just stick a hose into that nearby stream and dump the water in it? Or are they going to enter it into a sewer system? Or maybe something else? Those are things that have impact to the wetland or watercourse, or potentially could. And those are within your purview, because you need to look at what might affect that resource. What you need to be careful about is getting too far away from the resource, literally by distance, and getting so stuck in detail that you get too far away from what is the impact. I'm not sure how relevant the type of filter might be, unless you have an expert that says this filter will eliminate all the chlorine and do this and do that, and so the person can dump the water directly into the stream with absolutely no impact, versus this filter that doesn't do any of that, then that's relevant. But you're going to have expertise to give you that information. The case law that is out there says this can be technical stuff, and you need expert substantial evidence. So I'm not saying you can't consider that, but I'm kind of like stuck here. Like, I guess it comes down to, do you need to always consider that? I guess it depends on what's going on. It's very case specific. I suppose if you have a subdivision going in with 20 houses and they all plan to outlet their pool water into the nearby wetland complex, I think maybe filters and everything like that can be a very good part of your discussion, because you're trying to reduce impacts of some sort to that wetland, whether they be chemical or whatever. But again, you're going to need the expertise to back it up. If it's one pool, I don't know how much of a discussion or how relevant that is. It might be, it might not be, but it's going to be very case by case specific. I don't have 100% good answer for you, but you kind of follow me a little bit? No, I confused you.
Darcy, Peter Basserman, I think the discussion that we've had in the past with pools regarding backwash, some systems don't require backwash. Some do. Obviously, if you're backwashing, all right, there's an issue of wear, and the chemicals that are backwashed through that filter, and how harmful potentially are they, let alone just the volume of water. The other area in which discharge is an issue is wastewater.
Well,
So if we have a significant storm, and now you're above the skimmer level, in which you want to drop the level of the water so that the skimmer can do its job. That's the other situation where discharge becomes an issue.
I'm not saying you can't consider this. I'm just saying you better dot your I's and cross your T's and link it to what is the impact and how does it relate to your factors for consideration. It does relate. I'm just saying the more fine-tuned you get, or there's going to be some situations where maybe you don't have to delve into that fine of a process or looking at the project, and there's going to be some situations where you want to,
So this is Commissioner Boda, and I think what I hear you saying is that if we dive into those details, there needs to be a connection between why we're asking those details and what the likely impact with respect to the wetland is, as opposed to just a nebulous impact that may happen on an upland area, because the upland area is not of concern to us unless it is an impact to the wetland. Does that sound?
That's perfect. You just took my tired brain and put it right together. Yes. Okay. And like I said, case law that's out there over the years said that you need to have expertise on some of this subject matter, and you need to have substantial evidence. So if someone feels a filter may be not as good as another one, that's not substantial enough. You need, why is this filter better than the other one? How will it protect the wetland or water course? How will it reduce impacts? Right. Thank you. Any other questions regarding that? And always keep your focus, like I said, to what is that likely impact or effect. The Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Act is a protection statute, but it does ask you to weigh and balance things as well. And your focus is, what is the likely impact or effect to that wetland or watercourse? So can you look at these things? Yeah, but it's like you said, the process, how do you go about doing it? And you need to have some background and some evidence and expert testimony, perhaps, that you can hang your hat on sometimes, rather than just, I don't like it, or it's nebulous, like you said. All right, should we move on to get 2 more questions? There was a question, and I'm not quite sure, I guess, about bonding. What I've seen or experienced, practice for setting the amounts. To be honest, I don't have a good answer on this one. Towns do things all a little bit different. I have seen a lot of inland wetland commissions require bonding to ensure that stormwater management facilities are maintained and constructed properly, to ensure that ENS controls are maintained during construction. They've required bonding just in case an adverse impact happens, whether it be because an additional activity occurred that went beyond the scope of the permit, or unfortunately with some of the rain events we've had, maybe an accidental thing. But they've requested bonding to cover cleanup or mitigation for those type of things. Exactly the process for that bond or practice for setting them out, really that's going to go across. We have 169 towns. We actually have 170 inland wetland agencies. So we got 170 different ways of handling this. So I don't really have a good answer for you, other than maybe do a little looking into what some other towns around you are doing. See what they require as part of their permit conditions, and that might help you out. Any other questions regarding that?
Darcy, Peter Bassman again. Yeah, the issue, I guess, is even though they have to be done on a case-by-case basis, the idea is there ought to be some consistency in approach in terms of the areas in which you apply bonding, as well as what the risk and dollar amount of the bond, the relationship between those two, the risk and the amount of the bond. And even though there are, lots of different towns and lots of different purviews on applying that, to me, there is some reasonableness test in terms of the application of the bond and the extent. Areas that you can bond and areas where it might be a bridge too far to place a bond against a particular activity. And it would be, I think, helpful to the extent that we had information that said, if you're talking about a soil and erosion control, the range of bonds is between X and Y for, let's say, a small project. For a large project, it could be entirely different.
So I agree. I do hear you. That will vary across the state because it's just the county you're in. And I have known towns that have possibly been taken to court. They've probably settled out of court because it never went anywhere, who've required too large of a bond an applicant has felt. I've known of towns that haven't required enough and we're stuck managing a situation. I don't have a good answer for you, other than, again, depending on the county you're in the state, you might want to explore what some of your other neighboring towns are doing and if they're working. This is something that would be, this is a good thing that would be helpful if we had more information on and I could research and do, but unfortunately I don't have that ability to do that. So I don't have a good answer for you, Peter. I'm sorry. Other than, do you have some consistent process established through P&Z and that you can tie into that process or similar dollar amounts?
Jamie Frederick in the Wetland Agent. So kind of our practice has been when the commission requires a bond, the amount gets set after the approval point. So the approval says that the amount is to be approved by the inland wetland agent. And generally what that process is the applicant submits an itemized estimate of all the things that the commission wanted to bond for. And then staff reviews that oftentimes with the engineering department to confirm that the amounts are reasonable. And at that point, the bond will either get accepted or request to be revised. So the applicant's kind of involved in setting the bond amount, and then it's just kind of confirmed by staff. And I believe that's kind of the approach that planning and zoning takes. I know that they have a standard bond amount for like X linear feet of silt fence for anti-tracking pads. And that's generally kind of what we reference when looking to see if an amount is reasonable.
You have a better process than some, I can tell you that. I know some towns just slap a random dollar amount down. You may want to just explore and kind of work up a similar process with P&Z. I mean, it would bring some consistency throughout the town and would help applicants too to understand what the expectations are.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
You have one question?
Yeah.
No, you said you had two more. Bonding was one. And
one more. There was a question regarding enforcement and something about when to require a permit or after the fees for after the fact permits. This can be a really long discussion. I know you don't have much time. After the fact permits are never a good idea. I know a lot of towns do them. They want to try to work with someone. But the burden of proving a violation occurred or is occurring falls to the commission. The burden of proving that if I'm before you, that I deserve a permit, that I want to do this activity that will likely impact a wetland, that burden falls on me. The burdens are different. You shouldn't mix them. In addition, a permit does not have to be used. A permit has a life time frame with it. If I do an activity and it was in violation of your regulations in the Inland Wetlands Watercourses Act, and you ask me to come in and you're willing to give me an after the fact permit, but you want me to do some things to kind of correct some of the activity I did to mitigate for some of that activity, and you issue me a permit, thank you, but I don't feel like using it. So the best thing to do would take an enforcement approach. And enforcement does not have to be contentious. There's a variety of informal tools, from simply asking someone to come before you, work with town staff to rectify the situation, issuing a letter, show up at the next meeting so we can discuss this. And then there are legal or formal enforcement tools. That would be if you've passed a citation, allowing you to issue a ticket, a fine, you can do that. Or an order. Order is your best approach. If there's a large violation, something that maybe has been ongoing for some time and someone's just not correcting things and you're trying to work with them, the order is the approach to take. And sometimes you might want to issue an order right up front. Like I said, it doesn't have to be contentious. It could be a friendly process. Maybe you've worked out the details with the person ahead of time, but the order process allows and benefits you in a number of ways. One, since you've done all your research up front and you've proven there's a violation, if they don't abide by the order, you have everything lined up. You can go straight to court if you choose to do that. The other thing is there's no time frames. When you try to issue an after the fact permit, you have to wait 14 days to see if someone's going to request a public hearing. What happens if someone requests a public hearing, but the activity's already done? Sometimes people might think there's a bias there. Then you have to wait so many times. You know, there's a time frame, a process that you have to follow when you issue a permit. For enforcement, issuing orders, there aren't any time frames. Basically, the minute the order is issued, it's effective immediately. You have to have a show cause hearing within 10 days. It allows that potential violator to come before you and explain what they've been doing, why they're not in violation, and then you either affirm, modify, or withdraw the order. So if someone's working with you and they know what to expect, then they should show up. Everybody's in agreement, done, over with, project gets accomplished. The other thing is you could put the order on the land records and remove it from the land records when everything's been resolved. You can't do that necessarily with a permit. So I will always advise, and DEP is always advised, don't try to accomplish enforcement through the permit process. They're two distinct processes. They can run together. You can have someone with a large parcel of land doing an activity in one corner that now you've issued an order against. Meanwhile, they come before you with a permit application for another activity in another part of the parcel, and that's okay. The two can run concurrently. You can review them differently. Perhaps when you review the permit application, you may consider the fact that there's enforcement going on. But the two are separate processes. Did I answer the question? Okay.
Darcy, this is Commissioner Boda. I want to toss one more question at you before you go.
Yeah, I do we have time, Peter? I think we have time.
Yeah, we've got 10 minutes left. So I'm wondering if you would talk about when there is a significant activity and therefore there is a public hearing and therefore there is a requirement for the applicant to include prudent and feasible. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the Commission's position in terms of, well, the applicant has given a prudent and feasible alternative, and therefore we need to choose one of the options that the applicant has given because they've and so that's one part, and then the other part is just clarifying that those prudent and feasible alternatives need to be less impact than what they're originally proposing.
All right. First, you can consider feasible and prudent alternatives at any time. Under your factors for consideration, which in the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Act should be mirrored in your regulations, copied into your regulations. One of the factors you can consider is the applicant's, and I'm going to read it, the applicant's purpose for and any feasible and prudent alternatives to the proposed regulated activity, which alternatives would cause less or no environmental impact to wetlands or watercourses. Does it say anything about when you hold a public hearing for this or that? No. So you can consider feasible and prudent alternatives. Feasible and prudent alternatives don't have to be an alternative to the entire project. It could be an alternative, as you know, to the type of pavement you put in. Maybe you want, pervious pavers or something for driveways. Maybe instead of a culvert, it's a bridge. So feasible and prudent alternatives can cover a variety of things. Where I think a lot of commissions get hung up, and they think that when you hold a public hearing based on significant impact, some commissions feel that that's the only time you can consider feasible and prudent alternatives, and that is not. Even if you don't hold a public hearing, you can explore feasible and prudent alternatives. But the statute distinctly says that if you hold a public hearing based on a finding that there is likely to be a significant impact, initial finding, and you deny the application because you feel there's a feasible and prudent alternative, then you need to propose on the record the types of alternatives that the applicant can investigate. Also, there's some, let me look for it because I can't remember it. I'm looking for the exact language here. If the Inland Wetland Agency does hold a hearing, again, based on significant impact, or they believe there may be a significant impact to wetlands and watercourses, the permit cannot be granted unless you as a commission find on the record that no feasible and prudent alternative exists. So when you hold the hearing based on significant impact, it definitely triggers some of this feasible and prudent deliberation, but that's not the only time it triggers it. You can still consider feasible and prudent alternatives in other scenarios and other situations, even when you don't hold a public hearing. All right. So getting to the type of feasible and prudent alternatives you said, Suzanne, I wasn't sure if you can elaborate again on the second half of your question. Like you're wondering about, I think the type of.
I think it was in terms of the commission's, responsibility is the only word that's coming into my head, but I don't know that that's really the appropriate word. The commission's responsibility to approve an application because the applicant has put forward what they consider a prudent and feasible alternative, and whereas the commission may not recognize it as a prudent and feasible alternative because it does not cause less or no impact to the wetland.
All right, so I always go back to the words of the law. So you need to consider the applicant's purpose for the proposed regulated activity and any feasible and prudent alternatives to that proposed regulated activity. And it says which would cause less or no environmental impact. Mm-hmm. So if the alternative proposed has the same impact, then it's not a feasible and prudent alternative based on the way that factor for consideration is written. Because it's written that says which alternatives would cause less or no environmental impact to wetlands or watercourses. Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing is that they're proposing an alternative, but not necessarily a feasible and prudent alternative. And remember, the words feasible and prudent are defined in the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Act. And those should be copied as well in your regulations. And so feasible means to be constructed or implemented consistent with sound engineering principles. And prudent means economically and otherwise reasonable in light of the social benefits to be derived from the proposed regulated activity, provided cost may be considered in deciding what is prudent, and further provided a mere showing of expense will not necessarily mean it is imprudent. It's a mouthful. So I guess I get back to the words of the statute. Is it no? Does the feasible and prudent alternative result in less or no environmental impact? Because then if it does, it is a feasible and prudent alternative, perhaps. I don't know if I answered your question, to tell you the truth.
No, I think that this Commissioner Boda, I think that you did. And I'm wondering, I don't know that you would know this off the top of your head, but I know that there's constantly new case law that comes out on this topic, as a few others as well. And I'm wondering if there's any recent case law in the past 3 to 5 years that would be important for us to review. I used to attend the segment 2s, but they went away. Or
no, actually they didn't.
Did it? I've just missed them for a couple of years.
They're on hold because there has not been any significant case law in several years.
Oh, wow. So totally up to date.
So let me put it this way. There's been court cases, but the court cases that have come down the pipe have pretty much been the same subject matter: substantial evidence, expert testimony, making the record. There's nothing that's really resulted in a new interpretation. Addressed an issue that has yet to be addressed. There still are issues, just there's no court cases yet to address them. So we really haven't had something substantial to do some workshops on. I think that is just the nature of this law was passed in 1972. It's a mature law. And a lot of issues have been interpreted by the courts. So as far as feasible and prudent, I have not heard of anything in some time. No. And as far as
this is Commissioner Boda again. So is there perhaps, particularly for new commissioners, a central location that has a list of case law that is helpful to read? And the matters that it addresses?
Yes. Jamie, are you able to pull up a website for me? If you can Google just CTDEEP Inland Wetlands, and the first thing listed that comes up I could try it here if you are unable to. I'm still having problems with my setup here. But the first item that comes up should be the DEP Inland Wetlands webpage. There are a series of pages that the department puts together for inland wetland commissions. Over the past several years, I think since about 2010, maybe just before that, I've tried to put previous training information, outlines, things like that online, even though most of the material up there is still very relevant. There might be little tiny bits and pieces of it that are not quite up to date, but nothing that's going to cause any legal issues. Otherwise, I would take it down. So all the training workshops that we used to do on court cases and case law, all those outlines are available online on our website. More recently, I'd say since maybe 2010, 2000, maybe earlier than that, oh yes, this is great. Let me see if I can. So actually, if you go over to the left-hand side of the page to Inland Wetlands and Watercourses and click on that one. Thank you. Can everybody see this? You can nod of heads. So this is the homepage we put together for you. These pages need a little work. The department transitioned to a new web platform, and so some material got a little disrupted. I'm working on tidying it up, but this is what I call the home page for Inland Wetlands and Watercourses. on this page, there's announcements and some other information. But if you go to the left again, Jamie, training for inland wetland, or no, not even do that. Do legislation, case law. Thank you. It's in 2 different places. I have it in both places. So you did have the right thing up. Scroll down to the bottom of this page, please. Keep going. Case law. Here are all the outlines we've had since 2008. But the earlier ones aren't very good. They're just kind of the case name. If you click, for example, on 2015, you can scroll down through it. You'll see we have a description of the case, and then we have major points that you can take home and take away with it. You'll notice as you go through the years and through the outlines, you'll see a lot of take-home major points are substantial evidence, expert testimony, because that's what the cases have been heavily about in recent history. In addition, there's a lot of cases on agriculture and exemptions. So I suggest that commission members kind of look at those and you know, even if you just look at those major points, those bulleted major points, and walk away with just looking at those, that would be helpful. This is a good time, since we're wrapping up, for me to put a plug in. If Jamie, please, if you can go back to top of the page and on the left to the training for wetland agencies. This is so timely. Thank you for the opening. This page is information for you as commission members. We have hot links at the top of the page in that blue box. So if you click on one of those titles, it will jump you further down the page. The previous training workshops that we used to do as a segment 1, 2, and 3 approach is in the archive training material. More recently, we have our brand new Municipal Inland Wetland Agency Comprehensive Training Program online course that I just finally got up and established and running. It's completely free. I encourage people to take it. And for any members of the public that might be listening, that course is available to anyone. So anybody can sign up for that online course. I put out some e-newsletters. The articles are still very good. You can get those there. And of course, we have some training videos that are still very relevant. So check out this page as well. If you do click on, for example, Jamie, if you may, click on archive training material. You can see again the previous segment 1, 2, and 3. Each one of those links would open up another page with different years of, outlines, anything from legal and administrative issues to information on soils and vegetation identification, you name it, you can find it there. All right, I think I've maybe overstayed my welcome.
No, you're pretty much right on, Darcy.
I would like to just, again, I'm sorry I haven't been using my name, but I think maybe hopefully for the record purposes, it's me. But again, Darcy Winther. And I had hoped to have more of a formal training presentation, but I think hopefully this worked out for you. Please, if you want to invite me back, I'd be more than happy to participate again. If this has generated some questions, I'm doing this also for some other towns. You're the first, but I think this is a great way to kind of reach out to town wetland commissions and provide some information. So I hopefully it helped you or gave you a little insight, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any further questions.
Peter Basserman, thank you again, Darcy, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, next up is the approval of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes that were in the Dropbox for the commission. The first one is our June 11th, 2020 regular meeting minutes. I'd certainly entertain a motion to accept the minutes if there is one.
I'll give this Commissioner Sullivan, I'll give a motion to accept the minutes from June 11th.
Go ahead and do a second.
Them.
I'm sorry?
It's Commissioner Kraus. I'll second them.
Wonderful. Any further discussion? And we need to, I guess, go through a roll call here on the approval of the minutes. Commissioner Begeman,
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Kraus. Commissioner,
Aye.
okay, Commissioner Boda.
Aye.
And do we lose Richard? Commissioner Granalsh. Okay, we'll go at this point with are there any abstentions? Okay, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. Commissioner Basserman, yay. So we have a 4-0, I guess, count on that. Am I right on that, Jamie? Actually,
It's 5.
5.
Yeah.
Actually 5.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Commissioner Kraus, can you just confirm, I believe I let you into the meeting shortly before the training started. Is that correct?
Yes, it was 7:02.
Thank you.
Next up is the June 25th, 2020 special meeting minutes. Also in the Dropbox.
Commissioner Granalch, I make a motion to approve the June 25th special meeting minutes.
Thank you, Richard. Is there a second? And who was that second? Who seconded the motion? Was there a second?
This is Commissioner Boda. I can second it.
Okay. Any discussion further? All in favor, let's go through the roll call again. Commissioner Begeman,
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan,
Aye.
Commissioner Kraus,
Abstain, I wasn't here.
okay, Commissioner Granalsh,
Aye.
Commissioner Boda,
Aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. All right, now we have some applications for receipts. First is Inland Wetland 200701, 434 East Main Street. This is a approximately 25,000 square foot office building, associate site improvements. I think there was a brief discussion. Was this the one we had a brief discussion last time?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Yes, there was a pre-application review at the regular June meeting, and an application has now been received along with a request for a fee reduction. And the applicant is present to give a short presentation.
Great. Commissioner Basserman, who's going to
Okay. This is Matt Bruton. Can everybody hear me?
I can.
Yes. Okay, great. Again, my name is Matt Bruton. I'm an engineer from BL Companies for the record. I'm joined by the applicant, Vincent Giordano. He's also on the line, and our project soil scientist, David Lord. As Jamie mentioned, we were here last month to give kind of a brief overview of the project. We've obviously submitted detailed plans and reports. So I'll give you another quick overview. You'll just have a little bit more to see than the last time we discussed this. What I have up on the screen right now, can everybody see what I have, Google Earth? Yes.
Commissioner Basserman, yes, I can see it.
Okay. Where my mouse is now, this is East Main Street. The subject parcel is pinned here as 434 East Main Street. In general, it is this rectangular undeveloped piece along Route 1. The site is approximately 8 acres. There's a small clearing inside the boundaries. The rest of the property is wooded. The entire property is undeveloped. Excuse me. From Google Street View, this is the existing driveway entrance. sorry about that, tickle on my throat. This is the existing driveway entrance and the frontage looking in each direction along the road. So the Branford River, which you can see where my hand is roughly, clips the back right corner of the property. In addition to that, there is, you see this kind of cleared swath of trees. There is a sanitary sewer easement and a CLMP right away across the rear of the parcel. I'll show this better defined on this map now as well. You can see the sanitary easement roughly where I'm drawing yellow right here. And you can see the Branford River roughly in this location. The entirety of the easement along the rear of the property goes from this line to this line. So a sizable portion of the rear of the lot is encumbered by several things. Something else to point out is the wetland boundary line. This is dashed here in this blue. Just blow it up for a second so you can see where it is. So across the back and adjacent to the river is the wetland area that was delineated on site. What we're proposing is to maintain a single access drive to East Main Street, showing where my cursor is. We have a slightly under a 25,000 square foot commercial building. At this time, a tenant is unknown, but we're starting the process to, obtain permits to eventually attract a user to this lot. We're proposing approximately 117 paved parking spaces, which complies with the zoning regulations. As you can see, the parking lot is along the front of the building and wraps around the side. We show some tentative loading areas. And this will provide full circulation around the building for emergency services. We also, on the side of the lot here, are proposing gravel access drives. These are necessary to maintain access to the rear of the lot for sewer and CLMP maintenance. In addition to the proposed building, all the necessary utilities are available either on site or along East Main Street, including water, sanitary, gas, electric, and telephone. Of those utilities, the most concerning of yours will be the sanitary easement. This is obviously across the rear. The only available sanitary connection is to this pipe in the rear of the lot. We are proposing a connection here. Just be aware that with this project, we are showing no direct wetland impacts. All of the proposed work was in the Upland review area. This is the closest we get with a utility connection. Unfortunately, it's the only available option for sanitary on the site. Just to point out, the Upland review line is this black dashed line I'm tracing right now with my mouse. In addition to the utilities proposed for this building, we're obviously proposing a stormwater management system due to the increase in impervious surface on the property. This would have to comply with town regulations and also the Connecticut Stormwater Manual and the Soil and Erosion Control guidelines for the state as well. The goals of those regulations and reports is to mitigate peak flows, to maintain existing drainage patterns, and to provide water quality. And that in this case, that is 80% TSS removal, which is suspended solids. We're doing that with a series of catch basins, with sumps, deep sumps and hoods, a hydrodynamic separator, a subsurface detention system, and a level spreader as an outlet. So I'll just point out some of those features quickly. There's catch basins, obviously, strategically placed around the parking lot to capture stormwater, as shown here. Hydrodynamic separator prior to the subsurface system. The subsurface system in this location which would outlet in this direction, and along the base of the retaining wall in the rear is a level spreader. This will allow water to trickle out and enter the adjacent wetland and subsequently eventually the Branford River further along. We have provided a stormwater management report to detail the calculations of the design of this system, along with an operation and maintenance manual for once it's completed to be maintained in a condition to make it work as it's been designed. In addition to the plan you see here, the entire plan that we submitted, we did include soil and erosion control measures that would take place during construction before the site is stabilized. That plan depicts things that would protect the roadway, the abutters, and more importantly, the downstream wetland and river. Those things consist of silt fence, silt sacks, construction tracking pad, erosion control blankets, stockpile areas. So those would obviously stay in place until the site has been stabilized and signed off by, your wetland agent before they're removed. In addition to those measures, what you see in green here is what we're proposing to plant to stabilize the site after construction. So everything you see in green would be either proposed lawn or conservation seed mix. And we have a large variety of trees and shrubs adjacent to abutters along the frontage and spread out through the parking lot. That is a quick high-level overview. I know you guys are receiving it tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions. As I said again, the applicant Vincent Giordano is also here, and the project wetland scientist David Lord is here as well. So I'll stop there and let you guys ask any questions if you have any.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Was there any thought given to pervious surface rather than a paved surface?
Matt Bruton for the record again. Mr. Chairman, that's a good question. At this time, it was not considered. As I mentioned, we're proposing a commercial building. A tenant is unknown at this time. I personally am a fan of pervious pavement, but it's only really applicable with certain users. And given that this is unknown at the time, we have not incorporated it. And
Commissioner Basserman again, is this to be a single use building with a single tenant, or is it possible that multiple tenants would occupy the building?
Vincent, you can jump in if you feel a need to, but at this time, this could potentially be a split building between, a small office space and warehouse, or it could be, a single user. They've been searching around for interest in the property, and I don't believe at this time they've had any strong commitments from one or multiple users at the time.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Boda. What is the number of parking spaces that are associated with this building?
Let me go to the full plan set instead of the colored one. There's 117 parking spaces proposed. We are using general office as a guideline for now, which requires 100.
Can you repeat the last part? You glitched out.
Sorry. Yeah, we are providing 117, and right now we're using general office as a use of the baseline, and that would require 100 parking spaces.
So this is Commissioner Boda. So if you were required for 100 and right now you're showing 117, have you considered putting a number of spaces into reserve?
Yes, so that is a great question, Commissioner Boda. At this time, we haven't shown any on the plans as served. Obviously, this is kind of connected to an unknown tenant and the parking demand. This obviously may change based on the type of user that does move in. I think that is a good suggestion. If the user comes in and all the parking is not needed, there's no need to pave and add impervious surface, especially next to a wetland. So I think that would appeal to you guys, and it also appeal to my client for no reason to pave and spend money when it's not needed. We've obviously shown a max out at this point, given the nature of the lot and the unknown tenant.
This is Commissioner Begemon on map EC1. I don't know if this is like a typo, but you were mentioning those storm runoff boxes that go around. And on the plan, they have an SS next to them, but in the key, it's an SB, sediment basin. Is that the same thing? Map EC. Yeah.
EC1. This yeah.
Yeah.
Again, map Bruton. So the symbols you're talking about are circled here around catch basins. So that SS stands for a silt sack. Are you familiar with what those are?
Not really, Commissioner Begemon.
So Matt Burton again. A silt sack is a device that is placed into either existing or proposed catch basins during construction when land is disturbed. And the point of them is to, when water hits the unstabilized surface during construction, it's obviously taking soil with it as it flows down. And the goal of the silt sack is to sit in the catch basin, which is naturally a low point in the area, and to capture that silt. So it doesn't, one, damage the drainage system, and also go through the drainage system and eventually discharge, in this case, to the adjacent wetland. So those are placed in the catch basins during construction. Once the site is sized with the final landscaping and everything is grown in nice and solid, those silt sacks would be removed, and then the drainage system would have been protected during construction, and then they can be fully. It's the responsibility of construction crews during construction to periodically monitor, empty them, and replace them as needed. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Begemon.
Commissioner Basserman, is this a site and an application that we feel justifies a sidewalk, or are we comfortable with the plans that we have in front of us and on the Dropbox?
This is Commissioner Boda. I think that the relative proximity to the Branford River makes it, well, let me, yeah, I think that in and of itself warrants some closer scrutiny. I think it would be appropriate to look at.
Commissioner Sullivan, I concur.
Do we want to schedule that right now? Commissioner Basserman. But when's our next meeting, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. The next meeting is August 13th. And I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch what was said. Are you debating public hearing right now?
No, site walk.
Site walk, okay.
So Commissioner Boda, well, if we wanted to do a Saturday, that would, the meeting Saturday before would be the 8th, but we have daylight in the afternoon. So we could do like the 12th or the 5th.
Just Commissioner Basserman. Commissioner Boda, you're suggesting that on maybe the day either before or the day of, given the fact that we're probably going to have another virtual meeting, that we do the site walk close to the time of our next regularly scheduled meeting?
Commissioner Boda. Yeah, we could do the day before, we could do the week before, or the Saturday before. I think maybe not the same day as the meeting.
Okay,
I gotta feed kids. They gotta eat.
Matt, you can identify with that, right?
Yeah. You see the nice teepee behind my shoulder. That's not mine.
how about the Wednesday before the regular meeting,
It's Commissioner Boda, so that would be the 12th.
the 12th?
Mhm.
This is Commissioner Begemon. I'm out of town the 9th through the 16th, but if it works best for everyone to do it the 12th, that's okay.
Okay, Commissioner Bassman, so that means you're not at the next meeting in any event, correct?
I can be at the meeting remote. Yeah, I can do a
Oh, remote? Gotcha.
Well, Commissioner Boda, if you're away the 9th, then why don't we do the week before? We
Right.
can do the 6th in the afternoon.
Hello, again, Matt Bruton for the record. I'm assuming you would want either myself or the wetland agent to be a part of that site walk to point out features on the site. Is that correct?
Commissioner
Yes.
Bassman, yeah, that's correct.
Okay. David or Vincent, do you guys have availability in the week that the commission members are considering?
Yes, I do. This is Vincent Giordano. I am definitely available either of those days.
Commissioner Bassman, do I hear what's on the table is the 6th of August?
Yes, Commissioner Boda.
And what time works best at this point?
4, 5, 6. What works, Commissioner Boda?
About 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock on August 6th at 434 East Main Street for a site walk.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Sullivan. I won't be home from work by 4.
You said you would be or would not be?
I would not.
Can we do it at 5?
6 would work better.
Can you still, Commissioner Boda, can you still feed your kids at, can we do it at
Sully's gonna have to do it.
6? Okay, I guess going once, going twice, 6 o'clock on August 6th for a site walk at 434 East Main Street.
Commissioner Grenwald, that's fine.
Yes, this is Vincent Giordano. There's actually 2 access points to the site. There's the main one that Matt showed earlier on. And then there's a temporary access point closer to the railroad with an operable gate. If we all drive in that temporary access closer to the railroad, I think it'll be a little easier to get to the wetlands areas in the Branford River from that point.
Commissioner Bassman, thank you for that, Mr. Giordano.
Mr. Giordano, this is Commissioner Boda. Could you ensure that
Commissioner Grenwald, that would.
I didn't hear that.
I didn't either.
Commissioner Greenhalgh, can you repeat that?
Commissioner Boda?
Mr. Giordano, would you have staked the northern side of the building as well as where the level spreader and the temporary sediment basin is?
Yes. If any of you have driven by the site, you should understand that there's a temporary stockpile of earth there. However, we can still, I believe we can still accommodate the request to stake the northern side of the building. Matt, is that doable from your,
Yeah.
as it relates to the
Again, Matt
stockpile?
Burton, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely put the stakes in the ground. Just understand, members of the commission, that it may be float higher in the air than what we're proposing based on the elevations of the current stockpile.
Right, but we can definitely get this, the sedimentation basin and the level spreader. That's definitely available, right, Matt? Yeah.
Yeah. We can stake it all. It just, it may just be a little bit deceiving based on the stockpile height at the moment.
Commissioner Boda will certainly do our best to identify those points.
Thank you.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, maybe the commission might want to add to that. I think it's wetland flag 17. It looks like that's where the retaining wall is closest to the wetland. Maybe identify how close.
Yes. What was that request again, Jamie?
Where the retaining wall is closest to the wetland, if you can identify that in the field too.
I actually have the retaining wall. Matt and I took a site walk in, as did David Lord in the past, and I actually have the temporary, or rather the retaining wall location staked out with string line, so we can definitely see that one pinch point where it does come very close to the wetland.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So I'll send out an agenda for the site walk, and also I'll check to see if the town has any practices we need to adhere to because of COVID. I'm not sure if there's anything going on right now as far as guidelines and such for site walks.
Thank you, Vincent and Matthew and David Lord. Inland Wetland 200702. 67 Gould Lane, construction of open space development.
Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent, real quick. On the previous application, there was a request for a fee reduction. Does the commission want to wait until the next meeting to consider that request? Or do they want to consider it tonight?
Commissioner Bassman, that would be my suggestion. So, Inland Wetland 200702, 67 Gould Lane, construction of open space development.
Thanks for your time, everybody. We'll see you at the site walk.
All righty, Matthew. Is there somebody here for Inland Wetland 200702?
I'm here. Good evening, everyone. I apologize, my camera is not working.
And what do you have for us this evening, Michael?
You have before you, the first application is number 67 Gould Lane, which is the planned unit development for Louisa Court, also known as lot number 21, for the application at 47 Gould Lane. We are ready to go to market and are looking to start constructing homes there.
This Commissioner Bassman, I guess, help me understand the nomenclature here that says construction of open space development, where we're used to seeing what's appearing in the next two, construction of a single family home.
So this is Michael DeGioia from Donmar again. This is considered a planned unit development. It's an open space development. This is land in common. These are not individual privately owned lots. So it was the way that this project was originally approved. And as such, this particular lot number 21 encompasses 10 individual single family dwellings with land in common, almost like a detached condominium. And in multiple discussions with the enforcement officer, we are here seeking this evening, or I am here seeking this evening, administrative authority for the enforcement officer to approve on an individual unit construction basis permit based on individual erosion control plans once they are implemented and in place.
Jamie
Jamie, yeah,
Frederick.
can you put up on the screen lot 21?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. So I'll start off by sharing a quick section of our town GIS system showing the overall development. So this is the new section of Lamontre Lane in the center here. And to the east, this large parcel is what we're talking about right now. So I believe there are 21 single family lots, and then there's this large parcel with 10 single family units.
20 and 10.
20 and 10.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if it was 21 or 22 lots. So this is the site plan for lot 21, which is a 10 unit property. See what direction is. So north is this way to the right of the plan. And along the bottom of the plan, there's a conservation restriction area. The signage for that area has already been installed. And essentially what I discussed with Michael was the fact that the original subdivision approval required this lot to come back for individual site plan, for individual development approval. So I wasn't really sure how that worked, whether it needed to come to the commission or not. And also as far as the fee, the grading, I've only taken a quick look at everything because it was submitted yesterday. The grading appears to be the same as the approved site plan. The only difference that I've noticed so far is that the unit has a basement, whereas the site plan approved as a subdivision did not. And I know that there is some contamination on that lot. However, there's no conditions regarding it, but I wasn't sure when I saw that whether or not that's something the commission would want to review. But if it's by and large, if there's no difference from the approved site plan, approved subdivision plan, it seems logical to have it kind of reviewed at a staff level. So I think my concern or thing to bring to the commission's attention would be the basement being the only real difference. And what I would recommend is that as each unit is being submitted for development, that a plan would be submitted with the erosion controls and its grading proposed. I know that Michael is looking to do the grading for units 27, 28, 29, and 30 when he backfills for unit 29 in an effort to get that area final grade and stabilized. So that again would be a phase that would come in. He'd submit a site plan showing the grading extent and the erosion controls for when he wants to do that grading.
This Commissioner Basserman, I guess, I can't remember now the direction, but it would seem to me that the road is to the top of the page on, if I'm looking at this subdivision.
Jamie Frederick and Wetland Agent, that's correct. You can see
top of the page. Is that area
right here.
is that area now all seeded so that erosion, as this seems to be at the top of the hill, so to speak, that the area below it is well vegetated?
The lots below the development, Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, have been seeded and are have taken pretty well.
And it's Commissioner Basserman again. And then what is the soil and erosion plan again to the, that would be what, the west? To the west of the property that we're looking at?
Yes. So Michael DeJoya from Donmar Development. Chairman Basserman, as of right now, we currently have a silt fence behind lot number 14. And I believe it extends to 13. We have the stockpile of topsoil, silt fence, as well as the fill pile. However, the barrier between this lot 21 and the lots down gradient, there is no need for silt fence currently because of the swale that we have running to that retention basin that you see to the left of the page. So as far as erosion controls are concerned, Mylona McBroom has suggested that we address that on an individual unit basis as the unit plans come in. So currently, as Jamie had briefly mentioned, if you've been up there recently, we have, let me zoom in here. Excuse me one second. If you were to drive up Louisa Court on the left-hand side, I believe unit 25 and 24 currently have a fill stockpile. That fill material belongs across the street from unit 29 and the units that border the existing lots below, units 14 through 9. There's an approximate 3 to 5 foot fill on that side of the site. So Mylona McBroom has suggested that when we backfill unit number 29, we transport all of that fill, put it in place, cover it with topsoil and hydroseed. And that at that point, we would be able to topsoil where the current fill pile is, and that would restore all of lot number 21 at that point. At which point it would leave only individual lot construction as bare exposed soil, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I guess I followed you a little bit. I guess an additional question, Mr. DeJoya. Given the fact that these are all now going to have basements?
No.
No. Oh.
No. So the original approval reads that units 24, 25, and 26 are to be constructed on a slab on grade.
Okay.
That's the way that the original approval reads. However, 6 of the 10 are to kind of a belt and suspenders approach. They are to be constructed with an impermeable liner, which obviously we have to comply with. Unit number 29 is not one of those units that requires a slab on grade. However, it does require a liner that has been engineered. So that there's no difference with regards to the original approval in regarding a slab on grade or a full basement. If that makes any sense.
I'm not going to answer that one. I guess this is Commissioner Basserman again. The question I was trying to figure out is, are you excavating more now as opposed to what the permit originally contemplated?
No, to be quite honest, and I've enumerated this to the town engineer, and he's seen it on site. The contours on the original GIS map that the site plan was made off of, the contours are off. So, for instance, on unit number 28, if we were to construct a home,
Commissioner Basserman, excuse me, can you highlight 28 on this plan, Jamie? Thank you. Sorry, Ms. DeJoya.
No problem. If you were to excavate down as if this unit were to have a full basement, the bottom of footing is 1 foot above the existing grade that was there, and not 4 feet. So it's actually it's all in fill, if that makes any sense. So these units, I assume I understand what the purpose of your question. We are not going to be excavating into the ground anymore, if at all, and encountering groundwater, if that's the purpose of your question.
Well, that was one, but on top of that, it's just the amount of material that was either going to be stockpiled or moved off site or moved around or whatever.
It would, so to answer your question, it would change very little from what's there. So for instance, if we were to come in and construct unit number 29, once we went to backfill, the entire property line, we would need to install erosion controls, as it's the recommendation of Milo and McBroom to bring that entire side of the road up to grade, topsoil it, and restore it so that we do not have any more exposed soil.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So I'm now showing you the plan for unit 29 specifically. I'd also like to just clarify real quick, the requirement regarding basements is not an inland wetland requirement. That's a planning and zoning requirement. The Inland Wetland Commission did not have any specific requirements regarding whether or not these units could have basements. I was simply pointing out that the units did not have basements on the subdivision plan that was approved by the commission. There was also no restriction placed, but I just want to identify that as a change so that the commission could consider whether or not that was relevant. As you can see from this plan, there is a fair amount of filling in the area of the 4 units that have been discussed. So it looks like the existing grade at the corner of the house is around 81.7, and it's going to be brought up about 5 to 6 feet. Unless I'm, does that sound right, Michael?
That's about correct. And again, I'd like to remind the commission that the spot elevations that they have, the existing grades, are not correct. According to the stakeout that's there already for that unit. And I'd also like to reiterate the fact that the stockpile of common fill will be put in place and covered with topsoil so that it can be vegetated as soon as we can get that foundation in the ground. And that would conclude mass excavation and exposed soil for 47 Gould Lane.
Commissioner Bassman, I guess it troubles me that we're starting out in a substantial development here of 10 units, when right from the get-go we're saying that the elevations that are a matter of record are incorrect.
Michael DeJoya from Donmar. It's not uncommon for an aerial topo to be off by a couple of feet. This has been the case throughout the entire project, and we've dealt with it throughout the way. As far as unit number 29, for instance, I believe that spot elevation that Jamie's discussing is only off about 2 feet. And it's very common for town GIS aerial topos to be off.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And Commissioner Bassman, and the wetlands on this indicated where, Jamie, on this sheet we're looking at? I don't see.
Jamie Frederick
to the left, yeah.
Okay. Agent. I'll go back to the general overview. So unit 29 is right here.
Yeah.
There are some wetlands on the east side. They're actually at a higher elevation than the proposed activity. And as I stated, this limit has already been identified with signage and is pretty identifiable in the field.
Okay.
I'll go back again to the GIS. So the unit is approximately in this area. And of course, I didn't have the wetland layer turned on, but the downhill wetlands is over here on the western side of the site.
Mhm.
So we've got the basin, level spreaders approximately in this area, and then the wetland starts somewhere in here.
I guess this Commissioner Bassman, is there anyone on the commission that feels uncomfortable in moving forward with this particular application on an administrative basis?
This is Commissioner Boda. I think that I think that's okay. I'm wondering about the status of the detention basin, and if that is uphill of that detention basin, that it's really, I don't think it can take much more of a beating. So,
I'm sorry if I interrupted, Mike from Donmar here. Commissioner Boda, just as an overture, if I will. Currently, Lot 21, meaning the planned unit development, has not been graded or topsoiled or seeded. So the approval or the individual lot or unit approval administratively will not negatively impact or make any situation worse on site. If anything, what they're suggesting is that as soon as we're able to get the foundation in on unit number 29, we can bring the rest of that site up to grade. And they're telling us to cover it with topsoil and get it seeded. So if anything, it would only improve conditions. And I assume you're talking about the detention basin that buffers the Branford Land Trust property or wetlands. Is that what your concern is?
Commissioner Boda, yes.
Yeah. In short, as long as we're able to move forward, we have a common fill stockpile and we have a topsoil stockpile that has been left just for lot number 21. So as long as we're, or how should I say, the sooner we're able to put this in place, cover it with topsoil and get it restored, the sooner that everybody's concerns will be addressed or relieved.
Any other comments from the commission? Commissioner Bassman, Jamie, are you comfortable with inland wetland 200702 being done administratively?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I believe that as long as the grading and is consistent with the subdivision approval, that makes sense. And as long as the commission is okay with the addition of basements to the units. Michael, when do you plan to do the plantings? Would that be, have you considered that yet, or is it too early to have really thought about?
Michael from Donmar. I would probably say that would be something collaborative between you and myself. I would probably say the best time to do that would be once we have restoration at the entirety of lot number 21, just so that if we have any chance of sedimentation entering that basin, I would not want to ruin the aquatic plants and the extensive planting plan that's in place for that basin. However, I will follow your guidance. However you prefer to do it, I'm fine with.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I think it makes sense to wait until the large majority of the site is stabilized for the basin planting. But I think they should be completed once the majority of lot 21 is stabilized and not wait for the full development to be completed.
I would have to agree.
This Commissioner Bassman, do we don't need a vote for this to be administratively approved, correct, Jamie?
Nope, just kind of a general consensus. Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent.
One last time, is Commissioner Bassman, any commissioner opposed to having this inland wetland 200702 be done administratively? Hearing none, administrative approval is granted for 200702.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent will be granted. I still have to review the plans and I
Will be granted subject to the staff's approval.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. The other question I have for the commission is regarding the fee. I'm not sure how to apply the fees best to this. Do you want to do the full area, or do you think it's appropriate to do the full area of disturbance for the lot over again? It was considered in the subdivision approval. I know that for the individual single family lots, he has been submitting the fee for single family disturbance. This is a little bit unique because there's 10 units on one lot. Currently he has submitted the same fee that the developer has submitted the same fee as a standard single family lot, which is $810, I believe.
Commissioner Bassman, do we have precedent in this in other areas where other subdivisions, have looked for disturbance?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. I think it's a little unique because this subdivision was approved with the old regs, which had and honestly, I'm not even sure what the fee would have been under that review, because it doesn't really fit the categories, but the fees were different when the subdivision was approved. Also, if it's going to be an administrative approval to do it based on the area of disturbance, seems like a pretty high fee for making sure the plan is in compliance with the previously approved plan. So I'm not really sure that there's a past practice that would be applicable.
Commissioner Bassman, and the intent of the fee is?
To cover the review, the cost of review, essentially. Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. So if you were to look at it based on area of disturbance, and what the fee would have been at the time of the application, I'm gonna stop screen sharing for a second. I'll try and find this. For other residential, because there's more than one single family on one lot, the application fee would be $816, and he has submitted $810. Based on our current fee schedule for other residential, it would be $4,802. And if you were to do it based on single family, because they're all single family units, it would be $2,665.
So it's between 800 and 4,000? Is that the change?
Ranges from 816 to 4,802.
Well, I don't know. One man's, Commissioner Bassford, one man's opinion, the 4,000 is probably a little steep. At the same time, there's, going to be 10 units here that have to be reviewed and monitored over a period of time. I guess the proxy I heard was the 2,000 for the 10 single family units.
2,665 would be based on the rate for single family units, which is what they are.
Right.
They just happen to be on one lot. Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent.
I don't know. That's to me a start, anyways. Any other commission want to jump in here?
Commissioner Kraus. I think that sounds like a good rationale, Peter.
Peter Basserman, obviously we got to look at this whole fee schedule at some point when we get a moment, right? Because we're constantly now finding ourselves with our regulations as being, well, we could probably improve this with another review, but we are where we are.
Okay. Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. So it sounds like general consensus is that you're okay with agent approval and that the 2,665 application fee sounds to be the appropriate fee.
Yes. General consensus, is that good with everybody? Thumbs up? Okay.
Commissioner Reynolds, fine with me.
Now we're on to Inland Wetland 200703, 20 Lamontre Lane, Lot 4, construction of a single-family house. Mr. DeGioia?
Again, I'm here before you this evening, seeking administrative approval once our erosion controls are installed to commence construction on single-family home that has been sold.
Jamie, can you put up the overall plan again so we can see where Lot 4 is?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Lot 4 is on the low side of the development. The overview map is right here, and you can see it's located relatively close to the basin, which is this parcel right here. Site plan has the roof and footing drains outletting to the rear of the site. This is the drainage that ties in ultimately to the stormwater basin off site of Lot 4. From my brief initial look, it looks to be fairly consistent with the subdivision plan. I would certainly review the plan in more detail and ask for any outstanding information that I felt necessary prior to any agent approval if you guys are comfortable with that.
This Commissioner Bassman, is this a bare lot right now?
It's current, bare as in what meaning?
No activity on the lot?
No activity on the lot. Currently, it was hydro-seeded a year at least ago.
Oh, okay. Got it. Again, would this Commissioner Bassman would look to be if it's consistent with the original permit. This looks like a good candidate for agent approval. Any additional questions from the commission on Lot 4? The general consensus on the commission that this should be agent approval? Is there anyone that would feel otherwise? I think we have general consensus that Lot 4 Inland Wetland 200703 be a candidate for agent approval upon staff review.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Okay.
Similarly, Inland Wetland 200704, 28 Lamontre Lane, Lot 7, construction of a single-family house. Can you put that up on the screen, Jamie, please?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. This lot is also on the lower side of the new subdivision road, and it's closer to Gould Lane. It's the second lot in. There is a temporary sediment trap that is located on that property that would be filled in as part of the construction process. Any dewatering of that temporary sediment trap would be into the sediment basin.
Again, Mike from Donmar, aside from, so there's an existing sediment, a temporary sediment trap that was dug there, I believe 20 years ago, when they installed the riprap spillway down to the wetland for the notorious erosion issues on this site. Mylon and McBroom has recommended that we remove that sediment trap and fill it in. However, with this application, they have no longer recommended that, obviously because it would be for nothing. So that temporary sediment trap would cease to exist whether or not we were to proceed with construction on lot number 7, which has sold.
Commissioner Basserman. So I guess, Mr. DeJoy, I guess with that being then non-functioning or filled in or whatever, what takes the place of that sediment trap in the plan?
So Mike from Donmar, that sediment trap was in place for when, prior to lot number 6 being restored. If you can recall, S&E reports previous to this last winter, probably later in the fall, they were recommending us filling it in when we had an opportunity to backfill it and hydroseed it. Those opportunities never came to fruition because the sediment trap was full from all the rainfall that we got. So at that point, they said they ceased to recommend that. Now, now that it's dry again, they are recommending that. However, since we have applied for a plot plan at lot number 7 with the engineering firm, they have ceased to recommend that if we are to proceed with construction on lot number 7.
Amy Frederick and the wetland agent. The temporary sediment trap on site hasn't really been used in any needed capacity for some time.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Basserman, thank you. Any commission member have a issue with this particular application for lot 7? So hearing none, I assume we're comfortable with this being administratively approved, assuming that staff reviews the plan and is okay with it. Sounds like general consensus to me. All right. Moving, thank you, Mr. DeJoya, for your comments tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
You too. We have, let's see, enforcement next, Sunset Hill, NOV 103 Sunset Hill Drive, clearing and filling of a wetland. Looks like they have requested a continuance to the August meeting so that they can get the soil scientist report to us that we have requested.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I received an update that they've reached out to a soil scientist, but they haven't scheduled a date yet. So they requested some additional time and to continue to the August meeting. I said that shouldn't be a problem given the fact that should still give the commission time to review the plan prior to the fall planting season.
Sounds good. We have now a notice of violation for Thimble Isle. Filling and clearing in the Upland review area. I guess MBL, whatever that is, B8 3- or 3, yeah, 9, 839. So tell me what about that?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I received notification from the engineering department that there'd been some process placed in the northwestern corner of the parking lot at Thimble Isle condos. So I went out and took a look, and sure enough, there was some material. I contacted the property management company And he mentioned that I think it was the association's president had done some work trying to remove some trash that had been dumped there and level out the area where they put their dumpster pad. They didn't realize that there was a wetland as close as there was. So I've got a couple of pictures and I can share the letter with you, and the management company is present on the call to discuss the activity that has happened, what kind of the intent was, and next steps that the commission wants to see.
Yes, Brian Milano with Thimble Isle Condominiums. Yeah, we attempted to clean up the area. It became a dumping ground for people, we don't know who. So the association was out there cleaning up the area, and at the same time they were milling the road, Jefferson Road. So the association approached them to see if we could get some fill to level off that area and put in make a level area for our dumpster where, we have many elderly people who have a hard time getting to it. So we may have spilled over. I'm not sure. Jamie's been very cooperative. We've been, talking with Jamie, and we'll be willing to do whatever we have to get it cleaned and, back to where you want it.
This is Commissioner
Is anything eroding into the wetlands now, Jamie? These millings, are they moving?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. For the most part, everything seems to be pretty stable out on site. The area, I'm gonna pull up some pictures real quick. I think it might help explain.
So while you're pulling them up, this is Commissioner Boda. You said that they're asphalt millings? Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. Which we were told it was considered clean fill in Connecticut, but
it is not clean fill. So so you can think of asphalt millings a lot like you can think about coffee grounds and coffee beans. So beans versus grounds, you run water over the grounds and you're going to get some really dark coffee. It's the same thing that happens with asphalt millings. All of the those chemicals that are in asphalt become much more mobile once they are broken into milling, so they should not be left in a wetland ever.
Okay, I didn't think we were in the wetlands, but okay. Well, like I said, we'll do whatever we need to do.
So, Commissioner Bassman, so Jamie, is it or is it not in the wetland?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I will jump over to my notice of violation letter real quick. So at first I thought it was outside of the wetlands. I think it's probably pretty close to the edge of the wetland. I took a couple of measurements and I came back in the office and sketched it on some materials that we had. It looks like the material goes slightly over the property line by probably about 10 feet-ish. I didn't get a great measurement on that because there were some obstacles in the way. The adjoining property that it would be on is town-owned property. And I have another sketch which shows the wetland line from a previous application for the land, the town-owned land, before it was owned by the town. And while the location is right at the edge of the wetland, I'm really, I'm not sure. So I told the condo association that at the very minimum, I would expect the commission to require that the millings be brought back to the property line, and that any disturbed areas beyond whatever's left would have to be planted and stabilized in some manner. So to kind of give you an example of an idea of the extent of the activity, this is looking at the end of the parking lot. You can see the yellow curbing of the last parking space. And I believe this is kind of either a turnaround or dumpster pad location. They've placed some wood chips along the edge of the material that was brought in. This is looking at the wetland from the edge of the material that was brought in and the silt fence that they placed. You can see there's a tire here. So while they did take out some, I don't know, they took out.
Yeah, they took out quite a bit of material, garbage, junk, and we went in as far as he could, but that was the best we could get in there.
Jamie Frederick, wetland agent. It looks like some vegetation has also kind of been cut and pushed back along the wetland edge here.
This is Commissioner Basserman. So the plan is the removal of the millings and a planting plan. Do we have a planting plan of record, or that's still coming?
Jamie Frederick, and the wetland agent. For now, I told them to stop any further activity and stabilize the site, and that the commission would make a determination as to what was required. So they've not been directed as to what to do, but I did indicate that they were planting and removal of at least some of the fill would probably be required.
Commissioner Basserman, and your recommendation, Jamie, was to pull it back to the property line?
At minimum, I would say that would be the recommendation. Up to the commission whether they are comfortable with the material being to the property line, which would be about 10 feet away from the wetland edge. It is a lot of material that got brought in.
And Commissioner Basserman, what's the elevation, if they were to bring that back to the property line, what's the elevation difference between the end of that, where they pull it back to, and the wetland?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, I'm not really sure. It's probably about 3.5 to 4 feet high right now, but if they pull it back, they'll get closer to the natural slope. So another thought I had that I did not discuss with the association or the property management company was that they pull back the material until they get to kind of the natural slope and restabilize everything, which would also possibly prevent them from having to get special exception approval from planning and zoning. But that's obviously planning and zoning.
Commissioner Basserman, do we have a sense of how much further that would be?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So you can kind of see a little bit of the contours from here. So I'm not really sure. I didn't see it before the activity occurred. I might have a picture that kind of shows the side of the. I don't want to jump around too much on you, but go back to the pictures now.
I kind of like the idea of a very gentle slope. And I'm not sure the property line gives you that.
This is Commissioner Begeman with a couple of questions. Had Thimble Isles condos come to whatever zoning or commission body needed to form a parking lot like this, A, would it have been approved in any case since it's so close to wetlands and town property? And B, would they have been allowed to use these filings or the asphalt? Because if that substance would not have been approved, then it should all be removed, is how I think.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, they would have needed to get, if the correct process, they would have needed to get inland wetland and planning and zoning approval for the activity that occurred. From an inland wetland standpoint, I think the commission would have discussed alternatives with the condo association and what their intent was and how else they could achieve it. And from a planning and zoning standpoint, I would probably try not to speak for another commission and department. But they do have a regulation that requires grading within 100 feet of a wetland to get special exception approval. And this material would be considered grading. It is a really steep slope at the rear, so I think perhaps identifying a distance that it has to be brought back and a slope that needs to be achieved might be, or if the commission wants it all to be removed. I think the intent was to level out an area for the dumpsters. And for whatever reason.
This is Commissioner Boda, and I'm hearing what Commissioner Begemond is saying, and I concur that I'm thinking about what Darcy Winter was talking about with the distinction between issuing a permit and dealing with violations and keeping them quite separate. And seeing as this is a violation, I think that the violation needs to be rectified and not turned into some kind of after the fact permit. And so I think that the property management, the landowners need to restore, and then if they want to come for a permit, that they should go ahead and do that. But I do not wish to codify this, the work that was done without a permit.
Commissioner Bassam, just to be clear, then removal of the material that was deposited would be where your head is at?
Yes, Commissioner Boda, yes.
Commissioner Begemond, that's kind of what you were describing to in the beginning?
Yes, Commissioner Begemond.
Commissioner Grenolch, I think that's appropriate.
Commissioner Kraus?
I agree.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I agree. Just one more question. Was the dumpster always in this area, or was it someplace else?
It was Brian Milano, Thimble Isle. It was right by that tree you see in the picture on the left. Over more to the left, right there. Just now, like where the front tire is of that car, but in that area, right there.
So it wasn't where the new fill was put in, then it was on the edge of the parking lot.
Just in that one area where the arrow is now.
Okay.
So it sounds like the commission has agreed that removal of the material deposited is the first order of business. And then I guess if the desire is to level out this area, et cetera, to come forward with a standard permit for that activity. Anything else on that notice of violation, Jamie, that we need to address?
So it sounds like the removal of all the material that was deposited, plus kind of so essentially returning it to the pre-existing grade, and then I would imagine seeding it and stabilizing it.
So when you say removal, does that mean removal off-site, Brian Milano, Thimble Isle? Or onto our property farther in where it doesn't affect anybody? I want to be clear on that when I have to report back.
Jamie Frederick in the wetland agent. So any location within 100 feet of a wetland would be within the purview of this commission and would require approval. And as far as you would also want to check with planning and zoning before putting it anywhere else on site.
Okay.
But just Commissioner Bassam, just to clarify, I guess what Jamie said is beyond the 100 feet and assuming there's no P&Z requirement, you can do with it what you want.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
We don't have purview beyond 100 feet.
Oh, okay.
Okay. We got some other business
Jamie
here.
Frederick and the wetland agent, real quick, just to clarify. So I'm going to send them a follow-up letter, and it's going to state that all materials shall be removed and the area returned to the original grade, and that the area should be seeded. Does that satisfy the commission?
Commissioner Bassman, yeah, I missed the seating part. To continue to stabilize that area, I think that's a good suggestion. And Commissioner Bassman again, and Jamie, your letter will state that, correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
And the letter that you send to the association will state the area after it's cleared would be seeded.
Yes. And then Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, does the commission just want me to update them on once the work's been completed?
Commissioner Boda, yes, please.
All right, other business. Already talking about a meeting schedule for 2021. Jamie.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So this came up kind of with the pools and kind of general practice. Just for consideration, the commission approves their meeting schedule usually every November for the following year. One thought is for the commission to consider whether or not scheduling a second regular meeting might be something they're interested in. The commission doesn't have to have a reason to cancel, so you could have kind of a second meeting that you don't necessarily always have, but it would allow for applications to be received and start that 14-day period. Any applications that were received if the meeting's canceled could be published on that cancellation notice to still give the public notice of the receipt of those applications. So I just kind of wanted to plant that seed for thought. And we can kind of discuss whether or not that's something you're interested in. You can either discuss that a bit now or in November or ideally October.
Commissioner Bassman, yeah, I mean, one of the things is once we publish the schedule, we can't change it. So 2020, in terms of having meetings every 2 weeks, we have to have special meetings as opposed to just having a regularly scheduled meeting because we already published the schedule. So as 2021 comes around, and maybe it's not every month, but we need to be cognizant of the fact that if we only meet once a month, especially in the summertime and spring when schools are an issue, then that becomes an encumbrance for the public. So something to think about, and we'll I guess have a discussion further in August for our 2021 schedule. Next up is the modification to draft boilerplate document that we had discussed at the last meeting. Can you give us an update, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. So I started looking at that boilerplate condition document as it definitely could use some improvement in my opinion. I took a look at it and about half of it seems to be language from the town of Milford that I think was being looked at possibly incorporating, but it wasn't really adjusted for Branford. So I think what I did so far is I've kind of separated out what's specific to Branford and updated it based on recent practice. And then I kind of moved all the Milford stuff to the end so that it's still available for reference in case there's something there the commission is interested in applying, but so that it's separated so that it's not necessarily thought of as past practice because it may or may not have been applied previously in Branford specifically. So it's still very much a work in progress. If the commission would like, I can send it out for comments. You can update me with any thoughts you have and I can continue working on it for the August meeting, or I can try and clean it up a little bit more before sharing it. But
Commissioner Bassman, I would suggest, why don't you clean it up to where you are comfortable with it? And then you have to put it in the Dropbox and the commission can review it and give you comments at the appropriate time, whether it's at the August meeting or September meeting.
Okay.
Moving on, the pool application checklist. Looks like a discussion of the thresholds for when the commission would want to review pool applications and when they wouldn't. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Yes, so this was something that was requested at the special meeting in June. I've not had an opportunity to work on it yet, so it's on the list of things to do. And I think that was kind of to provide kind of a framework for future review of pools, so that way next year we're not asking the same questions in the review process that we are asking ourselves this year. So hopefully I'll have that ready soon too.
Thank you. Finally, under other business, Commissioner Basserman, de minimis fee, minimal activity impact fee, or minimal impact activity fee.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. So I put this on here because the commission used to have something called a de minimis fee, which I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the name, but I do think it makes sense for the commission to have a smaller fee for small projects like sheds and things that are pretty minor impacts, or, so that way the judgment call on whether or not to take a permit isn't, do I really need to make them pay another $185 for this application? So I guess the question is that something the commission would be interested in doing? I think before it was with the deep permit fee, which is required, $125. I would also suggest maybe considering making the total fee $85 with the deep fee. That's what the planning and zoning permit fee is. So when somebody's applying for any of these things that this would probably apply to, it's the same cost for planning and zoning and in the wetlands. And then the other part of the question is, if the commission is interested in doing it, is it something that the commission wants to fast track because this would be a regulation change, or would the commission want to look at some other things that they've had on their list regarding regulation changes at the same time?
Commissioner Basserman, is there a de minimis fee today in the regs?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. Right now, the only way to reduce the fee is for the applicant to submit a request to reduce the fee. The lowest fee right now, I believe, is $135.
Did this used to be in our regulation and got dropped with the last change?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, that is correct. And I think sometimes there's even activity that, so right now all of our fees are based on area disturbance, and there might be a project that's pretty extensive and pretty far away from the wetland, but it's just kind of on that edge, and you don't want to apply the disturbance fee necessarily at that point, depending on the project and what's entailed. So I've seen other towns call it a minimal impact or a minimal impact activity fee, which I think is more reflective of the process than de minimis. So that's one recommendation I would have in that process.
But de minimis is so much more fun to say.
Anything in my mind that makes it a consistent, smoother process involving, less work hours, etc., would be a good thing. So, one man's opinion is, yeah, we probably should have something for small impact activities that works for us and works for the public.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. So I guess the other question there would be if the commission wants to kind of define the activities that would qualify for that. Previously, there was really no definition. It was kind of a discretionary at the agent and agency's approval or discretion, which again, based on the various specifics of particular projects might be reasonable, but it might also be reasonable to provide some guidance as to what would fall into that category. Is that something the commission wants to staff to work on? Is that something that the commission wants to kind of think about and have as a discussion item at a later meeting?
So this is Commissioner Boda. I think that this goes back to the conversation of the fee structure that we have. And so there are two separate things. We have the fee structure, and then we have some changes for the regulations that have come up as we've been going. And so I don't know that there's a not busy time of year, but one thing that we could consider doing, like we did here, where we had Darcy had an hour set aside, or have a special meeting that we intentionally don't put other things on for. So it's not a special meeting for pools or whatever, but if we can maybe set a meeting for talking about the fee structure and a plan, not necessarily revising the regs, but a plan for how we're going to do that over time, because I think that those are both very large conversations. And when we've done reg revisions in the past, it's taken multiple months in a subcommittee. So I think that we could, in a special meeting, have a conversation about the fee structure, make some determinations, and then set up a plan for reg revision.
Commissioner Bassman, yeah, I like that better than a fast track just for the de minimis fee here. Because I think when all is said and done, it's part of a puzzle. It's got to make sense when we look at the puzzle. So I agree with Commissioner Boda. Is there a time on our calendar where we would like to schedule that special meeting now?
Well, this is Commissioner Boda, we could conceivably set a special meeting for August, have our regular business meeting the second Thursday, and then do the special meeting on the fourth Thursday for that conversation. And Jamie, you're not allowed to schedule anything else for that meeting. Nobody else gets to know. Nobody gets to do anything. No applications for receipt, nothing.
Applications can't be received at special meetings. Jamie.
Perfect. See?
Which is part of the reason why having that second regular meeting, and even if you cancel it, would be beneficial.
So that would be the 27th of August? '13th is our regular meeting. The 27th of August is a special meeting for the sole purpose of discussing fees. Hearing no objection, I assume that works for everybody.
This is Steve, Commissioner Sullivan. I can't make the 27th. It's the day of my parents' 60th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
Oh, happy anniversary to them.
Yeah, thank you.
We like Thursdays?
What did you say?
Do we like Thursdays? I mean, does the 20th work?
Yeah, I don't care.
Amy Frederick and the Wetland agent, just to remind everyone, there's the site walk on the 6th. So that would be 3 Thursdays in a row. If everyone's up to it, that's fine. But
Or we could move it to September 3rd as the special meeting.
When is Labor Day?
Not a Thursday.
Labor Day, I think, is the 7th.
7th, yeah, 7th.
Correct, the 7th.
Okay.
September 3rd,
That's fine.
that's good.
Works for me.
Wonderful.
Amy Frederick and the Wetland agent, 7 o'clock start time.
Sure. 7 o'clock, September 3rd, special meeting to discuss fee structures. Okay, we're getting into the home run here, home stretch here. Agent approvals, Jamie?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. A, B, and C were all brought to the commission at the last meeting and were okayed for agent approval. I received any outstanding information. D, I actually haven't issued yet. I thought I was gonna issue it today, but I didn't have the time. So technically it's an application, I guess, for receipt. However, I feel like it's appropriate for an agent approval. It's an in-ground pool, but it's located actually below the wetlands. So any drainage from the proposed activity would not be directed towards the wetlands. So the permit is really just to make sure that they're aware of the wetland, and there's also a catch basin in the rear of the yard, and that the activity is properly protected from those areas. So I do plan on issuing that hopefully tomorrow, and I will update the Dropbox with that once it's been issued.
And we have an appropriate plan for that matter record?
It's a rather limited plan, but given the likely impact to the wetland, I think it's a sufficient plan.
Okay. Lastly, we have correspondence, inland wetland 2006-03-14 Lamontre Lane, new single-family residence.
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. This is lot 1 from the Gould Lane subdivision. The commission approved agent approval at the last meeting. I just threw it on here because it hasn't actually been approved yet. I've been waiting for some information which has not been received yet. Once it's received, I anticipate signing off on it.
Just a question, Commissioner Baskin, just a question. Normal delay, or is this, do you have issue with this?
Jamie Frederick and the Wetland agent. The developer was kind of in a rush because he had somebody interested in the lot and they walked away. So he just hasn't been in a rush to submit the information.
Okay.
But it's pretty standard information that I'm requesting, so I don't anticipate any issues.
That's all on the agenda. Anybody have anything else that they want to add at this 9:42 hour?
Hey, it's before 11. We're making progress.
We're doing well. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Commissioner Dakota.
All right, great. Thank you all for joining, and enjoy your weekend.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. You as well.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.